Thebe, over to you.
Good evening, South Africa. I think I fooled you because I put up a picture of some guy there that I don't recognize myself. But as a quick way of introduction, some of you may or may not know, I'm from Kimberley, the Big Hole. I been to every single country in the continent, over 110 countries from the Arctic to the Antarctic, Cape to Cairo. Studied in the US, Italy, and South Africa. I named one of the 100 most influential Africans. I spent my significant career at Nike building the brand, introducing and building the brand in South Africa and across the continent. I've climbed Kili, I've climbed Elbrus, I've climbed Aconcagua in Europe and South America. I run the only foremost survey and ranking of brands in the continent. My company, Brand Leadership, on the Hall of Fame, and I started my university, my college, my postgraduate last year. But that's about me. So today is really about it's about you. It's about you. It's about building personal brands. It's about how to take your and to lift that brand across your world of work, your world of your corporate career, your personal life, and your community life. Now, everybody is a brand. It doesn't matter from a Hitler, because people get confused. I said, even Hitler is a brand. So a Hitler is a brand as well as Mandela is a brand. Julius is a brand. Richard Mapoya, Trevor Noah, Bonang, everybody is a brand. Chimamanda, everybody is a brand. You can be a brand, whether as a political brand, as a dictator brand, or as a celebrity brand, anything. These guys are brands. They understand branding. When you drive in South Africa, at least when you drive towards the building warehouse, you see them putting up there. Talk to me. I'm a plumber. I'm the best plumber. I do plumbing. I do everything. You can see they specialize. They say, I do something. Talk to me. So Richard Branson once said, who am I? I'm the high-loading adventurer, philanthropist, troublemaker who believes in turning ideas into reality. Otherwise, just know that Mr. Yes at Virgin. So, you know, everybody's a brand. So everybody needs to be able to define themselves. You see how simply Richard Branson defines himself. He just says, I am Mr. Yes, but he's the high-loading adventurer. You know, sometimes people ask us a question, how do you want to be remembered on your last day or when you're gone? What they really want to know is, what is your brand about? Mandela once said, when you talk about me, you must say, here lies a man who's done good for his country, for his people, who's done good for his people and his country. He says, that's how I want to be remembered. It means that's my brand. But you know, we're living in such interesting days these days. You know, in the past, your grandfather would go work for Eskom, work for some power utility, some United Nations, work for 25 years, and get a watch, a gold watch, a bicycle during World War, and all those, because we're pretty much all seen as the same. But I love what Guy Browning says. It's an old quote I got. He says, the days of mass-produced human beings are over. He says, in the new economy, you're on your own. Now is the age of mass individualization. He says, we're all individual brands. We get judged on our own merits right now. Now, as they say, you're the CEO of Me Incorporated, or as Jay-Z puts it, you're a business man. He says, we're all businesses. So if you think about yourself, you're a business at church, you're a business at work, you're a business at school, you're a business at home. What type of business are you? Branding is not just about logos. It's got nothing to do with logos, actually. You know, branding is about promises. I don't know if many of you remember that in 1983, Pepsi began to eat up on Coke because Coke decided to change the formula that everybody trusted. And they said the new Coke, because they wanted to change they wanted to change what people had come to expect of Coke. The people revolted. They said, bring back our Coke. Because it's no longer yours. You see, whatever you tell the story, whatever you promise people, that becomes your contract with them. I mean, like Kentucky, running out of chicken. Who does that? What else are they supposed to do? They got one freaking job. Sell chicken. and they run out of chicken. Or the other day, they ran out of potatoes in Kenya. People says, how could you run out of potatoes? I want my Kentucky in London, but not chips in Kenya. Because what a brand is a promise made. Promise delivered. Just deliver on what you promised. Whatever you promise is how you present yourself to the world. How you present yourself is as, I am Thebe Ikalafeng. This is what I'm good at. I'm good at branding or reputation management, whatever. You put it, whatever you put out there. Sometimes you put it out there verbally, you say it, you do it. Sometimes people deduce that. But the one thing is important, is as clear as Wally put it. In an a-religious world, brands give us something to believe. They define who we are and they signal who our affiliations. So what a brand does, it says, this is who I am and this is where I belong. When you see me, expect this series of actions or behaviors. Because what Tom Peter said so beautifully, he says, now you're living in a time where you have to be distinctive or not alive. You have to stand out or not alive. This is what we've learned about great brands, just general brands, which I love. I love using this too, because we can relate to brands, all of us. Great brands are very focused. First thing about great brands, 5 things I want to talk about this. Great brands are very focused. You know what? Mercedes is the best, but nothing. Volvo for life. BMW sheer drive. Folks, any one of those cars are going to get you from A to Z. The difference is how they've all positioned themselves. How Volvo says, with me, I want to focus on safety. Mercedes says, I want to focus on class, when you're with me, it's for decision makers. And BMW says, I'm here for the driving pleasure. So we all have to do the same thing about ourselves. We have to think about the same things about ourselves. So great brands are distinctive, Puma. So if we're talking, interacting now, and I asked you, what is Puma? You'd have said to me, Puma, Thebe, they make shoes. And Thebe will say, yes, not. Puma makes petrol. So distinction is about ensuring that whenever somebody sees this about your brand, they know exactly who you are and what you stand for. And I don't need to see the name. I know that's Coke. I know certainly that's Coke. Great brands are distinctive, Doesn't matter what language it is, doesn't matter what country it is, I can tell that's a Coke anywhere in the world. Great brands also change over time. Like our TVs used to be big. They used to have them cover the big stomachs in the 1990s. But times have changed, the TVs are skinnier. Some of us have taken on the roles of what they should be. But I don't know how many of us around watching today were around during when Nokia was the preeminent brand. Everybody wanted a Nokia. It was the phone to have. But Nokia is no longer around. Well, they're around, but they're not the same Nokia. We're now on iPhone, we're on Samsung, Huawei. And they asked the guys at Nokia, what happened? He's like, oh, we didn't do anything wrong. But somehow we lost. So you have to continuously reinvent and refine yourself, because as Charles Darwin once says, it is not the strongest of the species, nor the most intelligent that survive, because some of us like to say, I got 10 degrees here, we know you do. Says it is the one that is most adaptable to change. It's got to be changing yourself constantly. So you've got to adapt, but also you gotta adapt with time. You gotta adapt to your customers, adapt to your situation. This is us. This is us. This is how we are. This is how we are. The whole continent. It's just how we are as people. But if you take us, everybody wants to be like us. They injecting themselves with stuff. They are extending that, doing everything to look what our mamas gave us for free. But adapting is about thinking local and acting local. Look at what the guys at Levi said. They're like, we cannot go against the African tide or the African Kilimanjaro. What we need to do is we need to adapt our product to meet the South Africans or the Africans, what they look like. So that's why all of a sudden it's all over. What we know for certain, as the one situation once said, History will be kind for intent to write it. What it says is that you need to write your own story. JBS says, life isn't about finding yourself, because some of us, sometimes we're like, I'm going to go to the bush, I want to find myself. No, life has got nothing to do with finding yourself. It is about creating yourself. Creating yourself is what personal branding is about. Creating yourself is about you branding yourself. So how do you brand yourself as a human being? How do you become different yourself, consistent, original, authentic? The way to do it is understand what personal branding is about. It's conscious and it is intentional to influence perceptions. But actually, I prefer to say it is about being yourself, your best self. Because every single one of us have got what I call a default brand and what you have, a design brand. A default brand is, if you do nothing else, I can tell you who you are. If you just walk in here, you behave just yourself. I can say, oh, I know this one. This is how he behaves. This is what they're about. But the design is the recognition that I need to be intentional about changing how I am seen, because how I am seen impacts my work, impacts my relationships, impacts my delivery. So you need to be deliberate and conscious about doing this. How do you do it? So I'm going to share with you the 7 C's of how to shape your brand. This one is what I call clarity. You need to be clear who you are. As Jeff Bezos says, your brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. So you need to be very, very clear. Who are you? So who are you? When you leave the room, what are they going to say about you? Because you know what? We've been in this situation when you leave the room, they talk about us. We call it gossiping. They're not gossiping. They're just reflecting who we are. That's why we must understand. We must seek to understand what they know about us, what people think about us. The same way that when you're building a brand, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Nike, what you want to do, you want to do quote unquote research and find out what they say about you. Same thing. Find out what they know about you. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. Find out what's a gossip on you. What's a scoop on you? Ask your friends, ask your colleague. Do a 360 on yourself. Google yourself. Go on your Twitter, put your name in, not the hashtag, put a name in, and Google, you find some interesting things. They're talking about you. I always do that. I always go there and I say, they are talking about me. Then I ask myself the question, that which they're saying about me, am I okay with it? If I'm okay with it, is it aligned with who I am, with what I want to be seen, how I want to be seen? If it's like that, I said, I'm okay. It's all right. I'm happy. It's okay. They can keep talking. If it is not, I then say, do I need to get them to understand me better? How do I shape myself to understand better? What is my advantage, even at corporate, at work, in my relationships with my friends? Why do I matter? What's my brand? What makes me different? Ray Charles. With Ray Charles, probably some of you know that his name. His real name is Ray Robinson. And when he met with his agent, he was coming up and he asked themselves, and the agent says, how do I introduce you? Got so much talent. And he says, oh, Ray, just call me Ray Robinson. He's like, the agent says, I can't call you Ray. That franchise is taken because the biggest superstar in boxing was Ray Robinson. So you can't go with Ray Robinson, Ray, because Ray is taken. Because Ray Robinson stands for something, for a particular career. As about Mandela, a complete sentence. We don't need to describe it. But if we wanted to describe him, as time reduced the entire 95 years of Mandela into 3 words: a protester, a prisoner, and a peacemaker. Those 3 sum up Nelson Mandela. You can put a lot of detail behind it, but that's enough. Ask yourself, is it easy to describe you? Your brand must have 3 different things. One must be authentic, the authenticity of your brand. Who are you? Because you need to be yourself 24 hours. You can't just be a fake you. Who can you defend at all hours, even if you stop in the middle of the night in your dreams? What makes you different from others? And what makes you relevant? 3 important words: authenticity, differentiation, and relevance. It's all, second thing is about credibility. You can just go out there and come up with some words and names and position yourself. Oh, I want to be known as Thebe, the superstar thinker, strategist, and all those things. And people say, but what is it done? You know, like City of Cape Town did this. I used to have this, used to be City of Cape Town. I used to love it. He said, this city works for you. I love it. I love it for an important reason, because this is what you want your city to do. It must work for you. But then somebody says, this is working for you. Cape Town, beautiful city, the oceans and all those things. Then somebody in Cape Town says, but this is how I live. How could this city be working for me? There's no credibility in what the proposition is, because the city, as the person says, works only for a few. So it's important, whatever you say about yourself, that is credible. The third important part, how you position yourself, is what we call competence. You can get away on charm for about 15 minutes. After that, you better know something. This guy said, I love what he said. But all he says is that, listen, you better know something. You can't just say, like some people say, Thebe, can you please come work with me? I just want to build my brand. You know, you can imagine, I mean, I've worked with politicians, I've worked with celebrities, I've worked with companies, I've worked with countries in branding. They don't just say, brand me. They say, this is what I'm about. This is what I'm good at. This is what I can, this is my proposition to the world, to my church, to my society, to my country. How do I package it in a way that is authentic, in a way that is different, and in a way that is relevant? That's credibility. The fourth C is that about cover. You gotta package your brand. Put your brand in something. You know the guy. Most of you know the guy. It's a bit of a hustling. He was in Kenya during his school days. Then he wanted to run for president. Let me tell you, when he became president, CNN had a 1 hour interview, 1 hour discussion. They had Untitled Chapter, Versace, they had Giorgio Armani, they had Michael Kors, I think, and they were discussing for 1 hour his presentation. They said, oh, Obama looks so presentable, so presidential. His suits. Obama's chief dresser says he only has black suits. He did have a cream one, which caused a chaos in America. He says he only wears black suits and he has a series of ties and only white shirts. That's his dresser. He says in the morning, he puts them out there. He says because Obama doesn't want to get confused. He wanted to have a certain image that says this is how a president looks like. That's his cover. So if you say you're a businessman and you've got a meeting on Zoom or something, what do they expect you to be? What is the image that's going to come across? So when we've learned a few things during these Zoom eras that people will say, hey, listen, as long as they can see my face and shoulders, I still look, shoulders rather, I still look like a CEO. I just shouldn't get up because we've had some of those mistakes people getting up. Cover is also your name. People are changing names these days, like Kanye West. Just my name is Ye. It's part of his branding. Prince, symbol, he called himself. Michael Jackson, that laugh. So cover is not just, cover is everything. It's how you speak. It's how you dress. It's how you present yourself, how you walk. You see this young millennials, how they walk with a bit of a hop. As Jack Nicholson, he says, with my glasses on, I'm Jack Nicholson. Without them, I just bad at 60. He says, because this is part of my signature, my cover. This is what we know about the research. 55% of the impressions that people make of you are based on the visual. Imagine. And 38%, how you present yourself, how you speak. When some people speak, we just want to lean in because they are so engaging. They say content, in other words, your degree, your experience, and all those things. When you walk in here, we don't see those things. All we see is how you are, how you present. This one, somebody comes for an interview for whatever it is. We relate the interview to the job they've come to. We look at them, 55% of our impressions are, this one is not qualified for us, or this one is not going to fit in here. Before the poor person opens their mouth, only to find out later, sometimes I guess when they open their mouth, Or when they show us their CVs, then we're like, oh, wow, they qualified. But they just didn't present themselves that way. The fifth C is what I call connections. Gotta understand who is in my network. Gotta do clean up, folks. Gotta clean up. Look at your network and say, who's my network at church, at work, at school, at play, everywhere in society. Look at your network. Ask yourself the next most important question. Are there gaps? Who can I get in? I need to recruit. I need to get people into my network because I can't just be. I can't be. If I want to go somewhere, if you want to become a president and we only find you at Conca, I'm not sure. Conca, some club in South Africa, for apparently people who've made money from somewhere have got where. So if you want to be president of the UN, let's say for the Secretary General of the UN, for example, and you are not hanging out with the African Union, you're not hanging out in New York at the UN meetings, you're not hanging out among decision makers like that, but we see at Conca, we're like, nothing to say, nothing against Conca or any other club, matter of fact. The next question you should ask yourself is, who can you fire? Start firing. Today, when you leave here, I want you to go look at your network. I want you to go start looking at the gaps. But most important decision I think you need to make is, who is bringing you down? Who is repositioning? Who's messing up your positioning because they're in your network? Because our parents used to say, birds of a feather flock together. So true still today. Your network is your net worth. Judge you by the company that you keep. What's important, you cannot hide yourself. You have to stand out. And how do you do that? How do you build your connections? How do you get yourself out there? How do you build your brand? Advertising? Maybe, I saw some South African speaker, I think Vusi Thebe many years ago when he launched himself, about 10 years or so, he put up billboards in the streets on the main highway. I was like, that brother is bold. He took out billboards telling the story, the world's best speaker. That's how he introduced himself to South Africa and the rest of the world. And he put it out there and he became it. I'm not saying we should all advertise. Some of us can't advertise. Some of us perhaps are going to go on social media. But of course, social media also has its own story. We don't all understand it well. We get into social media and we do funny things. And we forget one thing important. These days, I'll have a personal experience of this. I have a personal experience that happened to me this past month. I won't talk about it, but it's political experience. So I was doing some work somewhere in another country, and they went into my social media. They went into my posts, and they said, and they called me they called me last week, and they said, Thebe, we saw you with XYZ. We do not think you're on our side. We think you are with the enemy. I said, no, I was not with the enemy. I was there in the crowd. I was not in the dark alley. They said, but you were with the enemy. We don't think we can work with you. So that's why it's so important to understand what you put out in your social media. As I said, so I looked at your Facebook page, man, there's no way in hell you get in this job. Because some of us are so excited about posting. I wrote an article during COVID that says sharing isn't always a virtue, especially when it comes to social media. But this is what you do when you're building your network, your brand, is understand that your brand is the sum total of everything about you. The 6C is about what I call congruence, how everything comes together. They say there can be no happiness if the things you believe in are different from the things that you do. There must be an alignment between who you are, what you say, and how you speak and how you present yourself. Like Steve Jobs and Apple, we know who they are. Tiger, who sold himself to us as a wholesome guy, a well-raised, one-woman man, only to find out he had a little small house here, there, I don't know, mid-20, 30. By the way, it just messed up his career completely. Oh, Bill Cosby, a rapist. Our Cosby, the epitome of manhood and fatherhood and family. Our Oscar, a murderer. As soon as Oscar was charged, DSTV was removing the billboard with Oscar. We don't want to be associated, Bill said. Tiger Woods, the crazy thing is, All the companies, his gold ranking went down, similar to the companies that were associated with him. They lost $12 billion the day Tiger Woods scandal erupted, the companies which are associated with him. Congruence is being the same person at home, at work. When Donald Trump ran for president, we knew exactly what he's going to do. And that's why he says promises made, promises delivered. Matter of fact, this is what I love about Financial Times. Financial Times says he is what he said he was: an enemy of free trade, immigration, regulation, abortion rights, a defender of the American fossil industry and the use of torture. He won in elections on these foundations, and his energetic pursuit of them as president is fitting and legitimate. Folks, I'm not saying that we need to be perfect. We need to be perfect human beings. I'm just saying whatever we want to be, let's be perfect. Let's be aligned with that. Can't be this thing and that. Then turn your head. What you do with your head, what you think, what you do, how you feel must all be aligned. That's congruence. I love what John James Missioner said. If you remember one quote here, his Missioner's one says, "The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his mind and his body, his information and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does, leaving others to decide. Is he working or is he playing? Because to him, he's always doing both, 24/7. Finally, make money out of who you are. You gotta commercialize who you are. People say the Kardashians have no talent. Well, Kylie begs to differ with $1 billion in the bank, because with no talent, she's created a range of brands because she understood how to position myself, how to leverage my, how to be relevant, how to be authentically myself. Kardashians. Position yourself in commercializing isn't always just about making money. Sometimes it's like people like Jack, who was called the chief executive started by Fortune magazine, the late Jack Welch. Jack, they write books, or Achaleke writes book, or Mandela write book, or the Mr. Moyo write book. Sometimes the book is how you commercialize your brand. It's how you take your brand out. The commercialization is not necessarily about making money. It's about how to sell your story. Or Bonang parts ways with the management. Wow, what happened? Because he says, oh, they abused my brand. Or Jennifer Lopez insured her legs for 17 million pounds. I think we know why. Michael Jordan earns 5% royalty on every Air Jordan. So he understands his brand. That's why he has amassed over $2 billion. He owns one of the NBA teams, Chicago Hornets, I think. The thing to remember about congruence, about commercialization, is that it takes 20 years to build a reputation, only 5 minutes to destroy it. If you knew that, you do things completely differently. So that's why you have to protect your good name, because it's the only thing, it's the most important asset. It embodies everything else. Sometimes things don't go the way we planned as a wrap-up, but so you then need to quote-unquote repent. That's why I love how Naomi puts it. I will not be held hostage to my past. He says, listen, this is what I was. I am now Naomi Campbell, the humanitarian. Naomi Campbell, a Pan-Africanist. He says, not Naomi Campbell, just a supermodel dating rich. No, I'm not Naomi Campbell. And do not bring my past up now, because I have changed. Or as Herbert Hoover, who before he became the 31st president of the US, everybody says, this man is the next best thing for South Africa, for the world. We've had a few of those in the continent, South Africa in particular. We always said this one is going to be the next president. And the man did get his chance. And when he did get his chance, Douglas Brinkley, a journalist, said, he's a case study on how not to be president. Herbert Hoover didn't take this line down. He was 60 when he left presidency, or late 50s. He still had another 30 years. And the next 30 years, he did a few things. He started UNICEF, the Boys and Girls Club of America. He started to rebrand himself, to tell the story differently of who he was. On his 90th birthday, 16 states proclaimed the Herbert Hoover Day. Do you know, Time magazine did an interview with him. And he said, Herbert, how did you do this? He says, well, I just outlived the bastards. So I love what Jerry Garcia says to me. That's how branding is all about. You don't want to be the best of the best. No. You want to be considered the only one who do what you do, the only one who ever lived. That's how you build a personal brand. Very happy to be with you today, and would love to hear from you, get your questions. Let's engage while I have my coffee. I'm trying to look at some of the messages on here. Blah, 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 blah. What is the... John T. Matamba, Spain, absolutely inspiring, you're powerful. Hey, I'm not here for compliments now, folks. I'm here to see how I can add value with what I know, a little bit I know. I've only been around for 55 years. And happy to, someone has raised their hand. Please ask the question. We've got
hi, Thebe. Yes, Ntombentle.
Hello, Ntombi.
How are you?
Very good.
You've just touched on rebranding, and the question I have is, it sounds simple for me to say I am going to go out there and retell my story, but in branding, consciously or subconsciously, I have created an image of who I am in the minds of other people. What does practically rebranding myself mean, so that other people actually get the story, or my new story rather?
To me, it is one of the things I said earlier about branding, which is one, you must first be clear. Who is it that you want to be? So define that. So you must define who you are, if you will, that which you are. And you need to deliver it consistently. Because remember, we need to forget the past you. And we got tons of examples, even in South Africa, so in South Africa, for example. I mean, how many people remember that Rebecca Malope used to sing pop music? I mean, Rebecca used to sing pop music. She won on pop music, but she rebranded herself as a gospel singer because album after album, she created great music in gospel. She said, I wanted to align my faith with my music, because if she found there was a disconnect between who she is as a singer and who she is as a believer. So it takes a bit of time. I think the one thing to remember is that to become a great brand takes a long time. As somebody once said, you have to build your brand like a bird builds a nest. A bird doesn't wake up every morning and then boom, the nest is there already. You have to do it slowly, one strand at a time. So it takes a bit of time. It takes a bit of time. You be patient. Be patient. I told you the last story about Herbert Hoover. He took 30 years. I'm not saying you need 30 years. You know, sometimes it just takes one big move, and then it changes your brand. One has to look at the specifics, obviously. Some specifics, it takes a long time. Some others, it takes a short time. Of course, brands are built on perceptions. So you need to then focus on how do I begin to change those perceptions about who I am and how people know me. So that's how you begin to tell your story, your new story, consistently. Sometimes is it changing a job? Is it changing a city? Is it changing friends? Is it changing? We do this all consistently. We got lots of examples here in the country and in the continent. Msawe Kosi?
Hey, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Thank you so much for the presentation. For me, I think the question is really on the networking side, and I think I find myself in the space where I really do need to have great network to go to where I want to go. However, I mean, we are born of different circumstances. How does one get themselves to be in the spaces or in the networks that he wants to see himself? And I'm saying this, and I'm asking this because what I believe is networking is way more than just that event where we go and drink, champagne and we speak until 7 and go home. It's really about creating those genuine relationships where people will remember you. And I mean, most of the stories that I've heard of people investing in other people, it was more of how they trusted that person more than they trusted actually what they were bringing to them. So how does one get to those relationships?
So let me first address one part of it, then I'll address the second part of it. The first part of it is that I think you begin to allude to it in a way that some people think that networking is about you going to a place and just taking. So when you go to a place, it's a give or take. You also have to give something. You also have to have something attractive about you. And when I say attractive about you, it may be your personality. It may be your approach. It may be your knowledge. It may be how you dress. I was in Kenya with Trevor Stillman, and we'd gone to meet Barack Obama. And I remember when we were walking, I was behind Trevor, I was wearing a black suit, as one shouldn't. Trevor was wearing these colorful suits. Obama spent a few more minutes with Trevor, and he says, "Interesting choice of suit. Who are you?" So he spends that time because there was something interesting. Trevor is not running another country, but he stood out. So there was something that must stand out about you. So that's the first part. So how does one do it? You do it. You go to it. I've had people, for example, who've hounded me on DM, on WhatsApps, on email, on all those things. And sometimes I hear people say, "I've been chasing you for 3 years, but I told myself I will get to you." So sometimes you just go there. You go for it. A lot of us, unfortunately, we're so shy, if you will. We shouldn't be shy. We should go for what we want. We should reach for the people that we want to reach. We should be confident enough to know who we are, what we want, and not who can get us there, who can travel the journey with us. Because remember, as you're traveling, they must also travel. As you're asking for them to hold your hand, you must also walk the journey with them. Because otherwise, just taking your energy a lot of times. I hope I've answered you. And you said something about some of us come from different circumstances. Do you know, I think it is it Bernard Shaw or somebody? Josh Bernard Shaw once said, a lot of people are always blaming their circumstances for where they are. He says the people who get ahead in this world are the people who look at their circumstances and go against them. And in spite of those circumstances, they redefine their world. So don't look at your circumstances and blame your circumstances. Rather, look at your circumstances and say, how can I prove myself wrong? Ridwana? Ridwana?
Hello, Thebe. Can you hear me now?
Very well, Ridwana.
Good. Thank you so much for this. Thebe, I'm in the space of women's sexuality and women's pleasure and relationships. And because sexuality and women's pleasure is still a space that is so taboo in our society and communities, it's a great challenge for me to brand myself and market myself in that space. And I'd love to get some ideas from you on how to overcome this kind of challenge when I'm in a space that people are uncomfortable with, not very aware of. I understand the parts on being very clear about my message and my competence and my credibility and et cetera, but I need advice from the perspective of how do I reach people in an effective way, given that I'm in the area of sexuality and women's pleasure.
What an interesting place to be in, Radwana. You're probably in the most exciting space in the career. You know, you sound South African. So South Africa is such an interesting and dynamic space that it's such an open country where quote unquote, there are really no such things as taboo, if you will. I mean, the fact that we've had in fact, for a long time, even I remember in 7th grade or 702, there used to be Dr. Eve, the sex doctor. Dr. Eve used to speak on sexual matters and all those, and psychology of sex and all those. And she was quite open about it. And then the young lady who just passed on, unfortunately, during COVID now, I forget her name, Dr. somebody who was on, I think was on Kaya as well. So first I wanted to say that there is no such thing is, at least in South Africa, this is a taboo area, because this country amazingly is so open to people saying themselves. What you need to do is assert yourself, but most importantly, you need to segment. You need to find your customer, your people. So find your people. Say, who is interested in my work? Who's interested in my topic? Who's interested in this? Then you already know. First, women. So where do I reach women? Then you say, perhaps to reach my first block of women are perhaps where my community or some centers or something. You reach out for so you must be clear who is your customer, who's your target market, if you will, as we say in marketing. Once you know who's your target market, who's the people that you can, that will find what your work interesting. And guess what it does? It works like a circle. You start that circle, it keeps widening. The circle keeps getting wider and wider because you begin to make impact. And then, of course, create your own channels. What I love about what we can do now, especially now in the era of social media and digital media, you create your channel. You put up your Twitter handle, you put up your Instagram, and you present yourself. Slowly but surely, organically, you will begin to get the people that find you interesting. And sometimes it's one person who's got one follower, but they're followed by 100,000 people. Then your message goes to the 100,000 people because they retweet it, and somebody else on that side retweet it, or somebody else talks about it. Go on LinkedIn, go on social media, tell your story. Radwana, I don't understand why you. It's about confidence. If there's one big C I should have always speak about is confidence is so important. Go confidently in the way that you want, where you want to present yourself. Let's speak to Hopolang. Hopolang, your hand is up.
Thank you very much. First of all, good evening, Dr. Thebe, and everyone also here on the platform. Dr. Thebe, thank you very much for half of the things that you have shared with us, but I've got just a personal question to you. Could you please maybe recommend some books that you personally read, perhaps for branding and just for self-growth? Thank you very much, Dr. Thebe.
Interesting question. So send me a DM and I'll send you a list of that. Obviously, I read widely, and because my interests are so wide. My interests, because part of personal branding, and I must just make the point. Part of personal branding is not necessarily reading books about branding, but it is reading books about your interest to broaden and to deepen your interest. So for somebody like me, for example, who's been to 110 plus countries. So many travel is important. The continent is important to me. So reading about travel, about countries and all those is part of branding. It's part of how I build my brand. It's part of how I build my credibility, if you will. Part of how I build my content, how I become who I am. So of course, when it comes to branding, then it depends. I mean, for work, I look at Wally Owens as one of my great guys, people that I absolutely admire, the late Wally Owens in branding. Of course, Tom Peters wrote the book in 1997 on Brand You. It is still the standard on branding, and you can Google it and you can get the work, actually the article online. He wrote it in 1997 for Inc. magazine. I think it did for Inc. magazine. It's still the standard of personal branding. That's I've always thought about. But to me, personal branding is about finding your interests, who you are, and consistently delivering on that and being yourself. Being yourself in the world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment, as Oscar Wilde once said. There's a question here I must answer on the side. Somebody was saying that how do I balance my how does one ensure they separate their personal brand from their business consultancy and manage public relations efficiently? From Andile Better. What an interesting question. So, and I like to speak about personal experiences and how I think about things. If you look at let's talk about Richard Branson, whom we spoke about earlier. So Richard Branson is an entrepreneur. He's an adventurer. His company, his business is a challenger business. So his business is very much aligned with who we are. So his personality, his values, how he does things in his away from work is aligned with how the company does things. Because you see, it's very difficult to separate who you are from where you work and how you do things. Because when we see you, we see where you work. And when we see there's a disconnect, we always say, Makanja, these people, such a disconnect between what they say. They go to church on Sunday and they say these things, but I see them all practicing the exact opposite. So it's all important that one of the greatest jobs is to try, and one of the greatest goals rather, is to try and find a place where your work is aligned with your world. So where your personality is embraced in where you are who you are at home, at work, and at play. Of course, sometimes we can, or 80% of the time, we can't get that opportunities. But to me, the important thing, that must be the consistent thing, irrespective of what type of work we are. So you don't really have to be adventurous and all those type of things, or boring, or church going, and all those things. But I think the most important thing that must be consistent is your set of values. So your values are very, very important. So the values, who you are as a person, what's important to you, you must find a place of work and a place of work, a place of worship, or a place of play which shares the same values. That's how you're able to find absolute happiness. As I posted there earlier, Freya Stiles, as he says, the things you do are different from the things that you believe in. You will not be a happy person. Pursue happiness is the ultimate goal in life. Now,
good evening. Am I audible?
Very much so.
Okay. Good evening, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. My question is a two-part question. First of all, I have a small business where I'm in the plant-based beverage industry. I'm trying to break into the industry. So how do I brand myself and my business to break into the vegan industry as well as reach that higher LSM level, sir? Or cater to that level, rather?
That's one question. Second question, it says a two-part. So what you've said here, you've said, I'm interested in a particular industry. I am interested in being known in this industry. So the questions, you can apply the same questions I said about personal branding into general branding. The question is, do you have credibility in that area? How do you begin to build credibility? Because to break in, you need to be credible. In other words, what you say and what you sell must be believable, or must be acceptable, or must be authentic. So to me, it's a very simple question what you're asking. You're asking, how can I get into certain industry? Very simple. Go in there credibly, go in there confidently, and find again what I said to Rodwana earlier as well. Who is the customer that you are aiming at? Where can I find them? Where do they live? Where do they eat? What do they communicate? What media do they consume? Because you then need to have a very authentic, or rather a credible proposition that which you sell. Then you need to deliver it to where they are. So find where they are, where they congregate, where they consume, where they work, and then sell your story there. But it starts with credibility. Do you know what you're talking about vegan? Have you done your research? Have you created a story? Have you created a product for vegan? What do you mean about you want to break into the vegan? In which way? Do you want to be a vegan thought leader, right? Do you want to sell vegan products? Or do you want to be a vegan farmer? What do you want to be? So decide what you want to be, and then go in there confidently. There's a question here from a grade 11, who says, I'm working towards being a counselor and a counselor/prefect. How do I stand out among a group of people who are already leaders, who have already built on the image for themselves? Well, if you're in grade 11, you want to be a counselor, a prefect, everybody is the same as you. Everybody is the same as you at school. They are also in grade 11. The question you should ask yourself is that, what makes me different? What can make me different among my peers? What do I do better? Or rather, what do I do different? What do I do different? What do I do authentically? What comes naturally to me? So that's how you begin the story. You begin the story at the beginning. First understand, like I said, the first C, how they know you. Then develop that clarity. How do you want them to know you? What is authentic and different, and what is relevant to the people that you want, to the school in this instance? What will be relevant if you come up with a story that says, this is how I'm going to stand out? Is it authentic? In other words, can you live up to it? Is it different? How different is it from all your other grade 11s? This apply even if you're not grade 11, by the way. And then third, how relevant is your story? In other words, does the school need it? Does the market that you're trying to do, do they need it? Or is it going to make them different? Or is it something into the future? So to me, that's how it starts. Should we ask Npo? Npo? Npo?
Hi, good morning, good evening. How are you?
I'm very good, Npo.
Good. Sorry, I'm a little bit sweaty. I'm in a training. Uncle Thebe, so I do photography and I'm a cinematography as well, right? And
Yeah.
I think I'm struggling to get like your high LSLM clients, which is my goal that I'm going to. At first, when I started photography, I used to shoot everything. And then it got to a point where I'm like, I shot people like, we documented people like Trevor Stearman. And then I started to see that they do it different. They choose to do something that's different and they stay that side. And they very big. They very big on socials. The only thing I'm struggling to do is to be consistent, which is I don't want to push quantity over quality. And I tend to say I'm not a social person, but my work, it pushes me to be social. So I'm struggling with that. I don't know what advice can you give me.
But Npo, you've answered yourself. You've answered yourself so clearly. You've said, and you used Trevor as a good example. So Trevor's on the cover of Time and on the cover of Condé Nast. And I remember both conversations about him were how he is redefining the African aesthetic or the new African voice in the world. A narrative. He says, this is how I'm going to tell my story with my camera. I'm going to use the African narrative. So you could choose anything. Some people are food photographers. Some people are fashion photographers. Some people are wedding photographers. Some people are happiness photographers. So you need to choose. And then you need to be consistent. Do you know why we need to be consistent? We need to be consistent because if you are not consistent, people are not going to trust you. They're not going to know what to get. I told you a story about Donald Trump. We know exactly what he is. So when he was busy fondling women, when he was busy lying, was busy stealing, we were not upset with him because we expected of him. So it doesn't matter what people say, oh, but we need somebody who's a good person. He says, that's not my brand. My brand is about lying, it's about stealing, it's about all those. That's who I am. We've got lots of examples here in South Africa and many other countries. So you need to be different, as you say, pick an area. You need to be consistent, do that often enough so that you begin to create a signature, a style. So we know, oh, if it's shot by Npo, this is what you can expect, how Npo shoots things. And then, of course, to me, that's you answered yourself, Npo. You know the problem. The problem is you are not living up to that which you know is the right thing. Kutlwano.
Hi, thank you for a great presentation. So I'm trying to position myself as a CEO, and I'm using LinkedIn as the primary platform to do that. But the issue is, how do I show competence, knowledge, skill without divulging, the projects I'm currently working on within the company I'm currently at, but just show that skill that anyone who's looking, headhunting, this is the person and they can deliver on that. So that's where I'm currently stuck on, showing that skill set, competency, credibility without showing company or current company information.
Again, here's another thing. So you want to be, let's say, whatever it is. Did you say hunting or or hunting just a word you use? So let's say you want to be whatever you want. Let's say, for example, you want to be known as a technology, as a high-tech individual authority, let's say, for example. Then if you're going to go on LinkedIn, let's say LinkedIn or Facebook or any one of those, and you want to appeal to CEOs or to speak to people of a certain level, then part of showing your credibility and the distinction there is writing opinion pieces, putting them out into, or writing short stuff, or sharing with them, or sharing in that space some of the thinking in that area around cutting edge technology. I'm speaking of should there be. So in other words, you need to stay close to your knitting. You don't have to disclose companies and all those. You can show your interest by constantly posting content or responding to content, because sometimes you have to post. Sometimes you can provide a perspective on content that's posted on the platform, and you give your views. Because sometimes we say, oh my goodness, I always love their views. They always speak in this way. So that's how we begin to show your competence. So sometimes people are going to say, oh my goodness, you need to speak to Kutlwano because I saw some of the things that she puts on there. That's why even go into social media, onto Twitter, we can tell who the type of person are. You know, whether your name is, I almost mentioned her name, but I shouldn't mention the name. Mazwai, for example. If Mazwai, her name. If she posts on social media, we know exactly what she's going to say. So even if you're for reading, but what she posts. So you need to, if you're gonna be on LinkedIn, you're gonna talk into LinkedIn, then you must contribute to the conversation. You can't just be there with your CV. Then you must contribute to the conversations. And you must you must start some conversations. You know, Tibuho from UCT. How's T? How's my young boy?
Hi, Uncle T. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. My leader at UCT.
Yes, it's actually. I was going to start off by giving that context that I'm a student leader at UCT. I'm in the SRC right now, and my question was around how do you, when you've gotten some way through like the assistance and the support of people, now set those respectful boundaries and also kind of decline certain requests which you're not able to accommodate for, or you can't really do anything for that case without kind of seeming too arrogant or seeming like you're betraying those people who helped you to get where you are, or kind of kind of creating that perception that you're actually not, because I'm sure you also as a marketer, that people will ask you for special requests like, hey, can you help me to brand? Hey, can you post this for me? And can you share this for me? How do you now request those requests without now it denting the perception of people have for you?
I'm gonna build off of what you just said. Set boundaries. So how do you set boundaries? Let's use social media, for example, as an example. So on Instagram, let's say Instagram, for example, my Instagram at Ikalafeng. So on my Instagram, you know for certain what you're going to get about it. So as I begin to set the boundaries by consistently sharing content that defines who I am. So you know for certain, if you follow me, you're going to hear me talk a lot about art, African art. You're going to see me speak about African travel. You're going to see me speak about, comment on perhaps African creativity. Then you're also going to see me speak about branding. So I have defined the boundaries. So in other words, do not come and ask me about where to get a joint, because I've never ever spoken about joints in my own thing. And of course, some of the ways you define your boundaries is by in let's say the way I've done it in my bio. If you read my bio, you know exactly the boundaries in many ways. You know for certain who he is, what he's about. Anything that I did not put out there, I do not respond to. I do not respond to anything that I don't put up there. If you come with a left comment, I will ignore it and I'll move on steadily. So now let's say it's in a personal space now where you are personal, you are not, and people are engaging with people. Of course, you can set people down. You can set people down and say, listen, I don't want to be difficult, but I just want to let you know that this is what I'm good at. This is what I've signed up for. This is what I want to be able, this is what my contribution is. Slowly over time, people will get to know what you are. But then you've got another responsibility. Your responsibility is to be consistent. As Npo was talking about photography, you then need to be clear, you need to be consistent, and you need to deliver on that which you say you are. So you can't say one thing and then you say, no, but I need to set boundaries. But how could you set boundaries then last week you broke the barrier and I went and you let other people through that same boundary? Do you know what I mean? So you need to be consistent. Masego.
Thank you, Ntate Ikalafeng, and good evening to everyone. You mentioned Naomi and her image, the way the public viewed her, that at some point she was like, forget my past, forget the things I did. Moving forward, this is the new me, and this is how you should see me. For someone like Masego, who doesn't have, a lot of feedback from people to say, this is how we view you, how do I know that this is how people view me and position myself?
Such a good question, Masego. You have to do a 360. Part of doing a 360, let's start at work. So work is an easy space. At work, there's nothing wrong with going to, first we go to HR. Second, you go to your boss. Third, you go to your colleagues and ask them the question. Listen, I'm speaking just on the work part. So, and we do what we call a 360 and say, boss, how am I performing? How do you think I should present myself? What do you think about how I do what I do or how I present myself at work? You're already getting feedback. So you must seek the feedback. If you cannot, if it's not coming to you, seek the feedback because you will get the feedback. Third, I've said to you already, people will gossip about you. Gossip is a beautiful thing, Masego. Do not discourage gossip because people don't gossip about things that don't work, that are not true. People gossip about generally what is roughly right or roughly misunderstood. So when people talk about you, they probably are roughly right or roughly wrong or wholly wrong, whatever it is. Your job is to not have a thin skin. Your job is not to have a thin skin. Your job is to say, you know what? Let me take this feedback as it is presented, and let me learn from what they are saying. And like I've said, social media and all those things, read those comments. Those comments are good, even if some of them are harsh. I know, for example, I know certain in this continent, people are very harsh on social media. So it's fine, it's okay. Let them say what they want, and then just learn from that. So ask, be proactive, and then ask them, and people will tell you the truth. So I hope I've answered you, Masego, about that. Yeah. So should we get Onke?
Good evening, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
This is the greatest time to be alive. This is the greatest time to be alive. It's an honor to be here. So my first question is, since you're talking about branding, since you worked with Nike, what is it that Nike has done so brilliantly that local brands like Thebe can do in South Africa? And my second question is, you have an academy and I'd like to be part of that. I did message you all of that. Thank you.
I'm not sure I got your question again. What, Onke, say it, repeat again?
Companies like Nike, since you worked with Nike.
Yes.
So I'd like to ask, what is it that Nike has done with their brand so brilliantly and so successfully that local companies like Thebe can do in South Africa in order to build their brand and become international?
Good question. So I happen to know both obviously very well. So a brand like, you know what's interesting? When I joined Nike the first time, 96. So 96, I joined Nike. It was it was nowhere in South Africa yet. It was a very small business. They invited me. Anyway, I joined Nike under duress. I didn't want to go, and they insisted I join them. They sent me to the US before I even signed a contract. And they said to me, come to the head office. I went to the head office. And they introduced me to a guy called Nigel Ferris. Nigel Ferris was the first employee at Nike. It was Phil Knight to start the company, Bill Bauman to start the company. I think Nigel Ferris was one of the first or the first employee. And I sat there with him in a little corner office. And I said to him, so what's so special about this brand? I mean, honestly. And he says to me, let me explain to you about this company, how it started. What makes it special is it was a company that is focused on the athlete, dedicated to doing A, B, and C to enhance the performance of athletes. He says our job is just focus on the athlete. We're clear who we're targeting, what difference we're going to make in the world. Yes, people may buy our shoes because they like fashion. He says, but we focus on the athlete and what their performance needs are. And I learned something important over the years. Then much later, I met the global marketing director of Nike while I was still there. And he said a second thing, which I learned. And he said, our job at Nike as marketing directors, he told us, we're all from all over the world. He says, your job as marketing directors is to understand what makes Nike a successful brand. He says, Nike, he was the marketing director, he was the vice president. He says, what makes Nike successful is we are boringly consistent. He says, we don't go with the time. We are consistent as to who we focus on. The third thing I learned from the global marketing director now. She then said, find out what drives the passions of your customers and speak to their hearts. Says that's how you deliver a great brand. So I hope I've explained to you how you build a great brand. So whether your brand is Drip or Batu or Tsepo Jeans or any word Makosa, which I know all very well, the question is still the same. Why do you exist? How different are you from everybody else? How authentic is your proposition? And how relevant is it? So it's understand all that and to deliver that. Use that the Nike example I used to explain to you. Specifically.
Thebe, we've just got a question on YouTube. Luke asked, to your point, my question is on perception. How do you change or influence how people perceive you? We evolve, and I believe that we can't really be a replica of what our careers are on paper.
So how do you change perceptions of how people view you? You consistently, first of all, you must be clear about who you are, and you must consistently be that which you want them to be, which you want them to know who you are. Remember, I started off talking about you have what you call a default brand. A default brand is who you are before you are, without explaining yourself, without even being deliberate about shaping who you are. It's how people see you. So what is your job? Your job then is to begin to change how people see you. I mean, look at a successful singer like Yvonne Chaka Chaka in South Africa. At one time, there was Brenda and there was Yvonne Chaka Chaka, Brenda Fassie and Yvonne Chaka Chaka. Brenda Fassie was certainly the biggest pop artist, and Yvonne was sort of number two around that. But what's so beautiful about Yvonne over the years is she did not focus on the music so much in terms of so that people can consistently judge her against a Brenda or any other subsequent. She rather said, how do I use music as a vehicle, as a platform to tell my story as an African, as a humanitarian? So that's why she won the World Economic Forum Humanitarian Award. She is a UN humanitarian something, because she said, how I'm going to be different is I'm going to use my brand as the Yvonne Chaka Chaka, and I'm going to do it consistently to be seen in the right platforms which reinforce that which I'm trying to say, and to consistently say and be and tell the story of who it is that I want to that I want people to see and say about me. So that's how, to me, you change your perceptions. You can't change your perception by taking out a billboard and writing out an article and saying, but people don't understand me. Of course, people don't understand you. Your job is to explain yourself. And part of explaining yourself is to consistently present the story of who you are, consistently, clearly, consistently, over time. And it must be a story that is authentic, that's different, and that's relevant. To me, remember those. Remember those: authentic, different, and relevant. Specifically.
Yes, hello. I
Hello.
wanted to ask, how do you as a new rather NPO get funding? Because I know typically based off of research and constantly trying to see how to get funding, it always has to be a year or two older. So besides getting funding from family and friends, how do you get funding from businesses that are credible while trying to create credibility as a new NPO?
See, you know, I probably will apply the same formula to this. The first part I want to say that as an NPO, how different is your NPO from any others? Because you know, the problem that most of us have is because we see somebody running a successful crash or running a successful corner shop. We think that if we also set up a corner shop or crash, we're also going to be successful because they're making money or they are being supported or they are thing. No, it's not going to work that way. The question is going to be, what are you doing different? What value are you adding? And how relevant are you? To me, that's the first start. Then the second part of it is to create channels to tell your story consistently so that people can get to know who you are and they can get to see who you are and where you are. Because a lot of us try to stand out from behind closed doors. How's that possible? You need to be out there if you want to be known and to be seen. Tell your story, write, be on socials, present yourself. You know, I started public speaking immediately after varsity. So immediately when I came back to South Africa, and I remember what happened. The ladies, some Speakers International, she says to me, listen, I've got 500 people who are coming who are coming here, they're all business people. I want you, she says to me, you seem to me like you can speak publicly. And I'm thinking I'm 27 at the time, I just came to South Africa, 28. I was like, yo, publicly speaking to who? And she says to me, it'll be 500 people. So on what? So she gave me a topic. I was like, yo, how do I get there? And then I realized the most important thing I needed to do was, I need to do research, I need to be prepared, I need to be confident. And I did just that. And I stood in front of the group. And that was the beginning of how I started telling, how I started building my profile, certainly as somebody who can speak, but in front of the public. But then, of course, what I also did is it was also the beginning of me understanding that you can't just speak on every single topic. It must be a topic that aligned with who you are, something you can say passionately and confidently wherever you are, even in your sleep, something that I have credibility in. And that was the beginning of how you do that. So basically, how do you stand out as a nonprofit? Make sure that first you are authentic, you are delivering something that is relevant and required, and third, that you are different from other people. Package it and tell your story. Tyndale, Oga, how are you now? Obito, Tyndale.
Hello. Oh, can you hear me now?
How are you? Yes, I can.
All right, sir.
Good to see you.
Good to hear from you as well and see you as well. Thank you for all the wisdom. Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna jump into my question. Okay, given the 7 C's, you know, and all it takes, what you've said, it takes a while to build a brand, and even when you're trying to recover, you give an example of someone who it took almost 3 decades to recover. Now, all things being equal, if you had to say, carve out a cheat sheet, so to speak, for lack of a better word, what would be the quickest way? What makes the difference between those who recover in 1 month and those who recover in 30 years? What makes that difference? What would you say would be some of the key ingredients so that you recover quicker rather than later? Thank you.
Such a good question. And let me use it. I'm going to use an example of a brand that has been tainted. So let's say, for example, you're a brand, and I won't mention names, but I'll mention the circumstances. I was speaking to somebody who was accused of sexual harassment, a high-profile person, and they asked me how do I recover from this? Because now it's about trust, it's about contrition, it's about credibility. So I said, and the important thing to remember is first, you need to face the truth. Second, you need to acknowledge it. You need to say, this is where I've gone wrong. And then you need to show some contrition. And when I talk about contrition is you need to make amends. And I'm speaking about a brand that has been tainted. You need to make amends. So let's say it was sexual harassment or any or one of those things. Then you need to say, oh my goodness, I've been accused of or rape or any of those things. I'm sorry for making such a terrible example. But then you probably need to say, my goodness, part of what I need to do, I need to go to rehab. I need to go to some, begin to speak to women, or speak to women's group, or be part of, I need to, so people can rehab, whether it's drugs, whether it's anything else, whether it's a bad career move, whether it's theft. There's lots of people who've been accused of having stolen money and went to jail and all those, they came back and they say, part of what you do is, part of recovery is you need to make amends. You need to make amends. But of course, in the simplest way, in the simplest scenario and circumstances, is when your perceptions about your brand are wrong. It won't necessarily take 30 years. I was just saying an example of how he lived for 30 years. But sometimes it is how soon you get to grips with understanding the disconnect between the perceptions and your reality, or rather the disconnect between your vision where you are and how you are seen. And then you begin the job to reduce the distance between. And part of reducing the distance between is what I said. Understand who you are from a clarity perspective. Understand, define who you want to be, and then begin to walk the journey. Sometimes the journey could be quick. The journey could be 3 months. Because sometimes you know how it begins. They're like, he's changed. He's now in this area. Then your job is to build and build and build and build on that. So it's not necessarily 30 years. Could be 3 months, could be 3 years, could be 30 years. It depends. It depends on how genuinely you do it. And it depends how earnestly you do it. And it depends most importantly, how consistently you do it. Yolanda, our host, the founder of this platform.
How are you?
Very good, Yolanda.
Very, very well. I've been listening and I'm in absolute awe of what you're saying. I'm taking notes like furiously, and I'm hoping that everyone is actually also taking notes for themselves. As you were speaking, I kept on actually hearing and actually synthesizing around is consistency, consistency, consistency. Cut through, cut through, cut through. Stand out, stand out, stand out. And, congruence, 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 right? Your purpose, your vision, whatever, wherever you are and what you're trying to do must be congruent all the time. So thank you so much. I just wanted to just make that kind of comment. It's really been incredible listening to you. And I'm hoping that everyone is getting a lot of value from today's session, and I'm certain you'll be coming back again. And this is not goodbye, it's just that I need to run to a dinner, but I just wanted to say thank you so much. I I really, really, really appreciate it. By the way, a question from my side, yes. There are people like myself, right, who actually have built up a profile, right? And the profile that you built up maybe has not been necessarily because you were building it up, but because of what you've done in the past, right? And now you want to actually say, actually, that's not who I am, or I want to change this about myself. I want to change how I'm perceived. How do I go about actually doing something like that? How do I think of myself differently, but still being congruent to who I am? I'm a technocrat, right? And that doesn't change. So yeah.
So you know, there's a beautiful book. It's called The Portfolio. Portfolio Life, which I absolutely love. And he was trying to explain to executives over the age of 50, for example, on how to consistently be who you are the rest of your life. And the one thing that he says, you must start with the foundation of where you are now. So you say, okay, there's two areas to start. One, there's a values area. It says, these are my set of values. This is uncompromising. The second one is to start from your competency area and your passions, rather, and say, this is what I do, I love, I actually do this. Then you ask yourself, how do I use that as a bridge to the one thing that I want? So because you cannot necessarily, so let's say, for example, in your instance, where you actually have, there's nothing wrong with your brand. It's probably perhaps what you say, I just want to switch from this to another. The question is what you need to be doing is, what do I take from here and how do I leverage this platform? How do I leverage my platform as an executive, as a technocrat? How do I use that to transition to something else, which uses my skills? Because you need that bridge. You know, it's the same as, for example, I was in corporate. I quit corporate, I went into consulting. I could have joined any consulting company. I decided not to. I started my own. And I decided, what do I take from corporate? I said, I can't dump the fact that I was so well-defined as a corporate person. I then said, let me take the one thing out of corporate, which is branding, working for a great brand, and build a brand proposition out of that. And so it's I take where you are and build onto that. To me, that's what it is, a bridge. You use that as a bridge to get to where you want to go.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna leave you, but thank you for coming. And I saw there's so many hands still on. I mean, people are not leaving. This was meant to be just an hour, and we're already on hour 20. Thank you for your time and your generosity, sharing your knowledge, and really mentoring people that are out there and who don't necessarily have access to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. There's a question here about how can a church become more influential in the world, especially to the youth, instead of being perceived as a religion. How interesting. You see, the beautiful thing about churches is that churches were supposed to be a place, an escape, a place of refuge, a place to go and be inspired, if you will, a place to go for renewal. Of course, now what we know is that some churches have become businesses, so they've completely lost the purpose of what they were supposed to do. So how does a church become more influential in the world? Well, by going back to the basics. What was the purpose of a job? In a place like we're living in, people have lost hope, people have lost our hopes and lives and so many things. How can the church be the one place that inspires people, that brings back that hope, that makes people believe that they can find better and be better? So to me, that's what you need to do as a church. That's what churches are supposed to do. And churches are supposed to say, how do I try and create a better life and contribute to a better society, rather than how do I take from the people. I'm sorry for those that are offended, but the truth is the truth, and it's all set us free. Galaxy S10, you don't have a name. You just call it Galaxy.
Hello, sorry. I've tried to rename myself, but for some strange reason, it's not allowing me to rename myself. So
did you try iPhone? Did you try Nokia? I'm teasing.
No, I don't know why.
I'm being silly.
I had to get into the meeting manually. I don't know. Maybe that might be the reason. The name is Tulima Kubane. I'd actually put a question up earlier, but I think you missed it. So hence putting the hand up. So the question is, I've got different areas of expertise. So one area is working with small businesses and communities. The other area is personal finance and investments. And then there's the fun area, which is more in my own time, which is around art, food, and travel. And I've got... Sorry?
I can see your question on the chat box. You
So,
say that you got so many different interests and how does one branch yourself? You got a perfect example. It's called Richard Branson. Why is he a perfect example for you? Because Richard is in mobile, He's in airlines. He is in record companies. He is in hospitality. None of those things are the same. Do you know what is the same? What you try to do is, it's not about the different things that you do. It is about trying to find what is the common thread. The common thread may be the businesses, or the common thread may be the customer. In your interest, the common thread may be what you do different in each and every one of those. So in Richard Branson's case, it's what he does different in each and every one of those. And what does he do different? He brings in anti-establishment. He brings in a sense of focusing on the customer, on the consumer, fighting for the consumer, trying to change the narrative, trying to change the industry. So that's what he does. So he does it across different industries. So your question should be, because, and then you say, I have different social media platforms. You are very busy, Thuli, managing all those. But you can consolidate all those into what Thuli is about. And then Thuli is about arts, culture, whatever it is. You got art, wine, food, and travel. Thuli, but that's one thing. You're into culture and heritage. That's what you're into. That's what you're into. I mean, it's one thing that you're in. You don't do many things, and you express your cultural heritage passions through art, through wine, through food, and through travel. You only do one thing, so you're not doing 20 things. You should only have one social media. I think that's pretty much it, right, Craig?
Yes,
Thebe,
we've taken more than enough of your time this evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for indulging me. It's so hot today. I need to go find food. I need to go drink another cup of coffee, and I need to segue off of this. Have a great evening, and thank you so much for being kind to me and indulging with your time. Have a good night.